Wow, I am so thrilled to see this many people. It is really great to see you all here. I'm going to give you the quickest history lesson of your lives to give you a brief overview of the seminary so that when I'm talking about the different eras in the slides, you'll get a sense of what we're talking about. This property began in 1887 as a hotel. It was called Ye Forest Inn. It was on the rail line, so folks could come out from DC when it was really hot and muggy in the summers in DC, avoid all of the nastiness that was the canal and the mosquitoes, and get out here. We're quite a bit elevated from the District of Columbia. So they could come out here and relax for the summer. Unfortunately, the hotel was not terribly prosperous. There was a depression in 1893 and the hotel went under. It was opened the next year by John and Vesta Cassidy as the National Park Seminary, and that was a school for young ladies of significant means who came out here. It was primarily a boarding school, although there were a few day students who came up from the District of Columbia, primarily the daughters of ambassadors and visiting senators, people of that nature. It was called the National Park Seminary, although it continued operation in a fairly uniform manner, but it changed its name in 1937 to National Park College, where it did begin to offer some more technical classes, not just the traditional finishing school classes that it had been teaching for women of society. It was taken over in 1942 by the Army during World War II under the War Powers Act. They needed all the property they could get their hands on for supporting the war effort. So this property became an annex to Walter Reed Army Medical Center. So it was where soldiers who had been injured during the war came to recuperate. Primarily, they were soldiers who had lost limbs. So this was where they came to get used to walking again with new prostheses. The Army has occupied the site throughout the second half of the 20th century. They started sort of moving out of this campus throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It was virtually vacant. And the buildings were not given any amount of care during the latter portion of that time period. So it was in fairly rough shape. Since the SOS was founded 20 years ago, we've been trying to get this property, get something to happen to revitalize it. Finally, we're successful, thank goodness. And we were in large part responsible for the Army finally turning over the property in 2004 to Montgomery County, who then turned it over to a pre-selected developer, the Alexander Company, working with EYA, and you folks probably know all those because you're living in the homes that they have built and refurbished. So starting with Maine, this is a building, as I said, it was built as a hotel in 1887, designed by Thomas Schneider. It was built in sort of a rustic shingle style, very popular in that time period. But when it became a school, it sort of took on a neoclassical look. So all of the buildings that existed were coated in white stucco to emulate the White City that was very popular after the Chicago Exposition of 1893. So you can see here, it's after it's got its coat of stucco on it. And it also, you might notice, it's got something that's now missing, and that's what was called the bell tower. And that's that part right there. If you go to the next slide, you'll see this is how it looked shortly before the renovation started. Bell tower came down in a storm in the 1960s, so that's been gone for some time. And this actually is one of the better shaped buildings during its period of decline. And here it is today. All the windows have been restored or replaced with ones that match the original. It's looking very cleaned up, very inviting. Fortunately, the Army protected the sign over the door, which says Ye Forest Inn in stained glass, and that's still 100% intact. We're very lucky. So if you were to come out the front door of the campus, of the main building, there's the fountain. I think everybody recognizes the fountain. Here it is. This is a great slide. We don't have too many from this period, which is the later years of the school. They've got their bobby socks on and their saddle shoes, and they're sitting outside the fountain enjoying themselves. Again, there's the bell tower that came down. But here's our fountain. You see it's got 3 tiers and a little cherub up at the top, and kind of a nasty stain going on here. And here it is when the Army occupied the site. Same situation. We've got people sitting outside enjoying our beautiful fountain. We've got one of the WACs and some of the recuperating soldiers chit-chatting. And you see our stain's gotten a little bit bigger. Next. And here it is from the other angle, so you can't see the stain, but you can see the cracks. You can see another crack, and we're missing the entire top portion of the fountain, not to mention that the horses are decapitated. Fortunately, Save Our Seminary has throughout the years collected a lot of the statuary that was on the campus. So we have put it into storage. A lot of it was also stolen, but what we could, we have protected over the years. And we did have some of the horses' heads. So go ahead, Steve. So the Alexander Companies was able to use the heads to model new ones and affix them to our horse bodies. So our horses are now united with their heads once again. And we've got our top bowl reassembled. And this is the day the fountain was turned on for the first time in probably 50 years. And we were thrilled to see the water flowing out of it again. So if you were to go out the front door, see the fountain in front of you, and take a left turn, you would sort of see a sloping down area that goes towards the Beltway. This is that area right there. This little piece is part of the Odeon, which is no longer standing. But it was a very peaceful, bucolic setting, no beltway, no major roads around. You're surrounded by forest. You've got Rock Creek Park right up against you. Quite inviting and a very nice place for young girls to get a lot of exercise. Go ahead, Steve. So the same view, just before rehabilitation started, this is the music hall right here. And this is sort of how the campus got a little bit junked up over time and a little bit neglected looking. We've got a concrete path to nowhere. And then today, go ahead, Steve. This is the area, that's the music hall, where the parking garage has gone. Again, the Odeon Theater used to be in this spot. So the ground had already been disturbed. It seemed like a good place to put a new building. And the advantage of putting the parking garage here, in addition to providing parking, which is quite necessary for the new residents, they were able to put it into the bank of the hill so that it's underground from this perspective. There's another deck underneath that nobody can really see. So it protects the view of the historic buildings by not having this new parking structure adjacent to a beautiful neoclassical building right here. So I think that was very sensitively designed, and someday we hope it'll be finished. Next. So we're going to jump inside the main building now. Everybody hopefully recognizes this. It's the community room now. It used to be the dining room. Dining was a very formal event at the campus during the girls' time. They dressed for dinner. They wore their uniforms during the day, but when dinner came around, they were to dress for dinner, and they came down and were seated at the same table every night, and they were served. They didn't serve themselves. They were served. And this is the setup. They had beautiful Chippendale-style chairs. Over 400 of which were auctioned off when the Army took over the property. Every once in a while you'll be in somebody's house or at an antique store somewhere out in Montgomery County and you'll come across one. And the fireplace, which of course is still there and has been beautifully restored. But you also notice that there's a passageway back to another area of the dining room, which isn't there anymore. This is now somebody's apartment. Although the archway itself, there's a shadow of it that still remains in that wall. It's where the TV is right now. So if you look in there, you'll see that arch was kept so everybody knows what the original form of the room used to look like. This is the same room during the Army's occupation. Again, the tables and chairs were sold off, and we have sort of more institutional dining facilities installed, but pretty much look the same. Go ahead. In later years, didn't look quite so nice. Unfortunately, the Army, presumably to absorb noise, put acoustic tile on the ceiling. And generally, when you put acoustic tile on a ceiling, you drop the ceiling down and suspend the tiles. Unfortunately, they stuck them directly onto the wood ceiling with a type of glue that was found not to come off at all. So they had to take off all of the ceilings. And if you look at the next slide, which everybody hopefully has seen, this is our new ceiling, replicating the old one identically, at great expense to the developer because unfortunately, they found that that glue wouldn't come off. But and there's that archway I was talking about where the TV is, right there. Next. So, folks might recognize this. This is in the main hallway, just about where the mailboxes are, I think, are right around here, right off the left side of the screen. And that fireplace is there currently. And this was the hallway off the main lobby. The rental office is just off to the right side of this picture. And you get a sense of what it was like when the girls were here. And if you go to the next slide, actually this is not a very bad slide. It looked a lot worse. But you get a sense. you get a sense of sort of the ceiling coming down, the paint coming off the wall, the plaster on the floor. That's our fireplace at this time. And now, if we look at the next slide, it's beautifully restored. If you take a close look at it, these little tiles that were made in a factory in Pennsylvania, I can't remember the name of it, but I'll think of it. At any rate, they're little soldiers or knights jousting or with swords. They're just charming. It's a really charming little piece. Next. And here we are inside, right where we are right now. This is one of my favorite pictures of the seminary of all, just because it's such a beautiful space, and it's so nice to see it being used as it was designed for. The ballroom was built in the 1920s, about 1927-28, at the height of right before the Depression, when everybody was flush with money. And it was, even at that time, it was a very expensive building to construct. It cost well over $400,000 to build. It was the tallest building reportedly in Montgomery County at the time, and it required that the Montgomery County Fire Department purchase a hook and ladder truck, which it didn't have prior to this building going up. So we see here, this is in the later years. When it was first built, the girls danced with each other. They weren't allowed to interact with the boys too much. It was a very proper school. But in the later decades, into the 30s, the young gentlemen from Georgetown University, the Naval College, the Naval Academy in Annapolis, folks like that, they were invited to come and socialize with the girls under heavy chaperone. And if you look back here in this curtained area, that's the back of the room. And if you turn around and look right now, what's behind that curtain is this gigantic speaker. That is one speaker. It was part of a sound system that went with a record player that was usually situated on the floor so the girls could change the records. That cost $10,000. It's an enormous, spectacular piece of equipment. A lot of things were stolen from the campus over time, and that thing ain't going anywhere. It is a big object, so we're lucky to still have it in its original location. And here's our lovely ballroom, mid-rehabilitation. This room was nearly 100% full of scaffolding so that the workers could get up and take care of some cleaning and rewiring and things like that. If you're afraid of heights, it probably wasn't the best job for you, but it really has made a spectacular difference to our facility. And here, of course, not that you need a picture, but here is the ballroom during the daytime. And that fireplace, of course, is the fireplace right behind us, which is a very decorative, beautiful fireplace. I invite you all to walk back and take a close look at it. This is what we call the ambulatory. It's this room, right, the sort of the outskirts of the room we're sitting in right now. And there's the record player right there that I was talking about. I think that's the speaker area. And I put this in just so you could see the girls enjoying some music, relaxing, but mostly because of the next slide, which shows it after a pipe burst. And this is sort of some of the things that SOS has faced over the years in our efforts to protect the property while it was vacant. We were the ones calling in a lot of emergency calls to WASA, to the police, et cetera, to take care of some of these problems, to the Army. So that was a big mess. But we see the results of having to go through that today. We still have a beautiful facility despite that. This is President's House. Anybody here live in President's House? Oh, good, 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 good. You're going to be surprised by what you see, I hope. This is a historic view. President's House was built in the 19-teens by the second president of the college, Dr. Ament, of the seminary rather. And you see, I don't have an exact view from that same perspective, but it's very little change today. I mean, it was in fairly good shape, and it was able to be restored on the exterior quite well. The only changes were to remove this little glassed-in porch, and this was a screened-in porch that's now open underneath. So it's quite a lovely building. Go ahead, Steve. On the inside, I'm not sure if anybody realized this, but the ceiling of President's House in the main hallway, and these are all condo units off to either side now, was an open area where one could look down from the second floor and enjoy this humongous big open space. I mean, the ceilings in that room must be 15, 20 feet tall. It's pretty spectacular. And this was because Dr. Ament, although he lived in the house, certainly, he also used this to entertain, to try and convince patrons to donate money to the school, to sponsor students, to help take students overseas, things of that nature. So he was looking for investors in his school. So this was meant to impress, it was meant to entertain. So this is the main hallway. right over on the far right is the fireplace, if you know that stone fireplace that's in there now. And if you look at that little stair newel post at the end of a staircase and look at the next slide, you'll see where we are. So that's still there, the exact same railing kept in place. Unfortunately, the Army filled in that space above at some point, and it wasn't reopened just to get enough units in the building to make it economically viable, so that the Alexander Company left it as it was. But you see the three doors here are in the existing place where the doors were historically, and the fireplace and the little benches to either side have been fully restored. And this is just an interior of one of the units, because not too many people get to see some of the condos. But we hope that at some point we'll be able to take an interior tour, a house tour of some of the units. So this unit happened to get a fireplace in it. You know, every unit is different. Every wall, I don't think there's too many 90 degrees angles in this building. If anybody ever needs to use the restroom while they're here, you might get lost. It is quite a maze down in the basement trying to get around. So some people ended up with fireplaces, some people ended up with giant windows, some people ended up with round windows, square windows, etc. It's all different, and that makes it unique. Next. So here we are, we're moving up to the north, past President's House, to Senior House. You'll notice the little plaques on the steps. They're marble plaques, and if you haven't seen them from the outside, they are dedicatory plaques. They say gift of the class of 1900, gift of the class of 1901, etc. And each class that graduated would plant some ivy or a plant at the base of their plaques, and it was a sign of their everlasting love for the campus. This shows there was another pipe that burst in the senior house, and you can see that wall is just sort of sliding out. It was this building, when you see the interior, you'll know this was the worst building of all. Does anybody live in senior house? Oh. Wait till you see what it used to look like. And so here's sort of a glimpse. You may notice that over here there's no roof on the building. And if you look through, you might also notice there are no floors. Go ahead to the next one. There it is, finished up, looking gorgeous and beautiful, and our little plaque's still in place. Everybody's happy, it looks gorgeous. But this is where it came from. Go ahead to the next one. This is the interior shot. That's looking down from President's House into about the second floor of Senior House. What happened is that pipe burst in the first level, and it weakened the whole system, and basically the floors pancaked into each other. And so the whole building collapsed on the inside. The walls remained intact, and the Alexander Company was able to save them. And they used a big crane to come over the top of the wall and take out all the debris and remove it. Any other developer would have knocked the building down. It would have been a lot cheaper, a lot safer, and a lot easier. But because the building is protected, it's historic, and it's not to be demolished, I suspect they could have gotten a waiver on this one because it was in really rough shape, but they didn't. They rebuilt it. So if you look at the next one, here's after they took the floors out. It was the four walls. I don't know if one of your units is one of these, if you can figure it out. That's the music hall right back there. And it was cleaned out, and they rebuilt it entirely, and everybody has beautiful new units. Next. So on the inside, historically, of Senior House, I was just going to focus on the fireplace here because it's something that everybody recognizes. And if you go to the next slide, this is what it looked like just before renovation. This floor, again, basically the fireplace going down to the basement was holding the building up, essentially, at this point. So that's sort of a landslide right there into the basement. And then the next slide, it's looking fabulous today. Next. Anybody in the music hall? Anybody live in the condos in the music hall? No? These are really nice units. The building happened to be built with very, very tall ceilings that are sort of coved in, and it makes for a lovely interior space. But here it is during the school's occupation. It was built, it was named Teresa Catherine Music Hall after Teresa Catherine Ament, the president's wife. It was where the girls would go to practice their music, give small recitals, etc. A lot of voice lessons, piano lessons, things like that. And you see it had all of these sculptures along the top, and it's beautifully ornamented. This is the wing of the Odeon, which is that building that's no longer there. In the next picture, this isn't even, I didn't have one of it when it was in really bad shape, but the columns were just blackened and they had big holes in them, they were hollow. I mean, it looked like it was going to come down at any minute. And this was really a mess for quite some time. And go ahead to the next one. They were able to save some of the columns. Some of them had to be replaced. But we think that the gray ones in this picture are the original ones that have been primed, and the white ones are the newer ones. So they were able to save the columns and use the capitals to recarve new ones. So we have a beautifully restored building back to its original appearance. Next, and there it is. Next. And here's the interior, very different today. I wanted to point out Andromeda up here, Andromeda in chains. She's got her hands behind her back, chained to a rock, sitting in front of a mirror. And if you go to the next slide, she's been taken down while the building is in really rough shape. Mirror's broken, stairs are kind of collapsed. And in the next picture, this is somebody's unit, I believe, and there's Andromeda. It's going to be inside, up there with her mirror and her chains fully restored. Next. This is called the Chateau Garden Causeway. I don't know, it's sort of on the back side of this building right over here. And this exists because during both the first and the second president of the campus strove to protect the girls, both socially and in every physical aspect as well. They were very well taken care of. And every building on this fairly substantial campus was interconnected by covered walkways. So the girls never had to go outside. Like tonight, when we're all going to walk to our cars in the snow and the rain, girls wouldn't have to do that. This is the Chateau Garden connected, and this is the ballroom right here, that tall building. That's where we are right now. That curved space is where we are. So this goes around behind and connected to the back of the ballroom, and it went over and connected to the back of Senior House, so the girls could get in and out of the main building without ever having to go outside. And this is typical. There are connecting walkways throughout the campus, you'll notice. Here it is in its a less dignified state. A lot of the plants were, it had a lot of ivy cleared off, like that building back there has. Again, here's the ballroom where we are with the magnificent windows we see up there. And this, I like to joke, because there's two of these walkways that are very similar. And I don't know, Bonnie may know what exactly they're going to do with the space at this point, but originally the thought was that they would be broken up into two of the condo units to go, one would go from about this point that way and the other would go this way, and there would be really, really, really long walk-in closets. And here it is today, fully restored. I don't think you could quite tell how canted some of these walls were, leaning out over the pathway. And this sort of path lent itself to a new roadway to get back into parking areas. So it's looking quite good these days. And here's the Japanese bungalow. So we're moving around to the back side of the campus now. This building is right outside. It was one of the sorority houses on the campus. The girls were each required to belong to a sorority. It was thought to be socially beneficial to belong to a group, to be able to plan activities with your sorority sisters, to host teas, and everybody had parties for Halloween, for May Day, etc. They were very, very active groups. They sponsored their own lectures. They had meetings. They had individual clubs within the sororities. And this is one of 8 sorority houses on the campus, and all the individual small buildings you see dotted around were the former sororities, and they're all being sold as single-family houses. And they were single-family houses during the Army's occupation. They were officer housing. So the interiors were really already converted to serve family lifestyle rather than sort of an open sorority space. Girls didn't live in them. They were just clubhouses for them. Here again is a different viewpoint, but I wanted to show you this angle because the slide after this shows it in its very deteriorated state, just before rehab began. And this is called the Japanese bungalow because it used to sort of have flared edges, and I don't know if you noticed it had little cresting along the roofs. Very Japanese in thought. It got a little mucked up with sort of a roof extension. They enclosed the porch, and of course it looks like it's falling apart and nobody would want to live in it. Now, however, in our next picture, here it is from the front, which faces the campus rather than facing Linden Lane. It's looking pretty darn good. And on the inside, this is what it looked like historically. You'll see the fireplace right here, and this is a staircase that runs up right behind that wall right there. Very charming, the little diamond pane windows. And the next picture, I think, shows the restored fireplace. Everything kept intact, restored beautifully. To accommodate new modern living standards, next slide, they put in a staircase right next to the existing stair that's here, because there was no connection between the first floor and the basement without going outside. So not too many people want to go down to watch TV in the den by going outside. So they accommodated a little stair in here, but kept the overall sense of the space, and it's quite lovely. The chapel, this is going to be a single-family residence, a condo unit. Really beautifully restored steps, beautifully restored everything. And on the inside, we'll see it in its historic state. These are the original chairs in the chapel. I mean, it was a non-denominational chapel. The school was Christian in overtone, and they had visiting ministers, circuit ministers, come in for various Sundays. They also used it as a gathering space as well, for lectures and that sort of thing. The Army, go ahead, the Army put in pews, more traditional pews, and this is just before rehabilitation started, and I just wanted to point out that this is not a dirty slide. And those aren't, dust spots on the lens. That's mold. So this was a pretty nasty building. And that's just a really small example of the work that's gone on the campus. And today, a couple of slides just to give you a sense of how beautiful it is. All of the interior spaces were kept as open as possible. It's got a little loft at this end and a bedroom under there. The kitchen is right here under the stained glass, and that's the steeple light. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful unit. So lucky somebody has got it under contract right now. Here's Miller Library. This is across the street, across Linden Lane. It was a library for a special collection, the Miller Collection, which was donated to the school. And just want to point out that little porch right there. And in the next slide, lost its porch, looking a little forlorn. And today, this is the owner, Ed, who's beautifully restored this house and lives in it currently. He restored the porch that hangs out over here. It's a remarkable, remarkable space inside. I think I have a historic view next of the girls enjoying the library. It was 2 stories tall with sort of a little catwalk that went around the outside. All of that's been restored, it's absolutely a remarkable space how they're able to get enough living area in there without filling in that floor. And we hope that at some point we'll be able to take you all inside that for our house tour. This is the Spanish Mission. I think this is one of my favorites. Red tile roof, little bell tower, very, very much of the Southwest. This one took a beating. If you look at the next slide, during the Army era, that whole front porch, you'd never know this had any sort of Spanish colonial look to it. I didn't know it looked like that originally. I thought it was just a dumpy blue building. Lost its window. It just looked kind of junked up. And today, we're lucky. It's been fully restored. It looks gorgeous. This one has a spectacular interior, designed in the Southwest style. Really, really beautiful. And if you come to our lecture on sculpture, you might learn a little bit about our friend here, the Hiawatha, but I won't give away his secrets. Next. Oh, I meant to point out in that last slide, the greenhouse that was right behind, this guy, you all know that house that's right behind. Well, it didn't start out there. It was over by the Army gates. And I don't know how many people realize that to maximize, to have the most efficient development of the townhouses, they picked this house up and moved it across a big field and plopped it down where it now sits and has been fully restored and looking lovely. But it's quite dramatic to see a house of that size moving across a field. And there it is up on its new foundations getting finished off. Edgewood is the house that's right behind the mission, and this is an old farmhouse that was probably here about the time of the start of the school, if not before. It's called Edgewood 2. Edgewood 1 was the name of the property from which the seminary was developed, the original land grant. The Carroll family owned this land. And here's Edgewood today. Everything is identical. The windows are in their exact same place. I looked at this slide closely today. The porch railings are the same. The lattice under the porch looks identical. It is a remarkable restoration job. So if we were to go across, and we're still across the street, and looking back at the gym, so Linden Lane is right along here, where the townhouses currently are, used to be the playing field. It was always used for athletics, whether it was for sports like field hockey, like they're playing here, riding horses, they had a riding ring, there were tennis courts over there. This was always an open space used for athletics. And if you look at the next slide, when the Army came in, they put in a laboratory building sort of a concrete block, one story, nothing special, ugly building. Next, and then those came down, and here's our fabulous townhouses where hopefully some of you folks are living right now. And then if we go to the next slide, I think we're going to cross back across the street. Was also open space. This is the Rose Garden. This was an extremely well-tended property. The landscaping was absolutely important to the administrators and to the girls who were required to do a lot of walking as part of their education. And so the Rose Garden was pretty remarkable. Here's Linden Lane right there, and that's the gym to give you some sense of where you are. There was apparently a gardening staff of over 50 people just for this campus. So it was pretty special. And what became of this spot in the next slide is that the Army put some of those one-story cement block buildings. This is looking the other direction from the gym. And then today you'll see that we've got our new townhouses. Down here are historic buildings, some historic residences for staff of the school, and we've got some that are meant to mimic sort of that Spanish colonial style. Next. So we're moving back across the street. This is Aloha, which was the first condo building that was rehabilitated and sold. Originally the building was just this little part right here, and it was all shingled in the shingle style, so these are all wood shingles on it. And that was the house of the Cassidys, the first president and his wife and family. They lived in this house, Aloha meaning welcome. When the second president came in and he built President's House, this became the junior dormitory, and this large addition was put onto it, so the juniors were here. In the next picture we see something, a little bit more what we think of with the maidens, the court of the maidens that was added here, or the porch of the maidens, and the building's been stuccoed. And in the next one, we see that it wasn't in great shape. We got a lot of broken windows. We got a lot of stains up here. It looked kind of derelict. That beautiful railing's gone, and we've got a pipe railing up there. And then next, they protected all the little figures down here, all of those female sculptures. They're called caryatids. They were all protected during construction, and we ended up with a beautifully restored building with really, really amazing windows. All of them are different. I don't think there's any windows that are alike in this building. And just a lovely space. And we're going to finish up with the gymnasium, which doesn't look like this today. It really was a highlight of the campus. I mean, quite elaborate. You see the portico here, which continued from the Court of the Maidens. You see a couple maidens, the same brick pattern with arches, continued across what was a grass field, and it's now the parking area, from the Court of the Maidens. And again, that was to keep the girls covered. It's got a glass roof on it, so they didn't have to walk across the open field in the snow or the rain. And it led right onto the portico of the gymnasium, elaborate neoclassical, over-the-top decoration. Again, it's lost some of its sculptures along the top. Well, it's lost a lot more than that. It's lost some structural integrity too, but it really is a magnificent building. In the next slide, I've got some interior shots, just because this was a remarkable building for a campus of this small size. And all girls, really just had an outstanding athletics program and spent a lot of money on this building. So you've got these two are essentially the same view, is an open gym space. This is a mezzanine running track along the top. You can see people standing on it in this one, watching the big tip-off for the game down here. In the basement of the building, there is a pool. Here it is. It was tiled beautifully. It is still there. It was covered over during the Army occupation to create a floor on it, and they had concerts and showed movies in this space. And we were never quite sure if that was still there. And we finally, when the Alexander Company took over the property, we were able to get through that floor surface. And sure enough, we stuck a flashlight down there, and the tiles are still there, and the pool is intact, and it's gorgeous. And we're thrilled to say that some lucky person, when this building is rehabbed, and it is the next building to come up for rehabilitation, this is going to be incorporated into somebody's living unit. So they will basically have a sunken living room with tiled walls. It will be spectacular. Unfortunately, we have a long way to go. This is what the gym looks like as of about a year ago, so it probably doesn't look much better now. It's really one of the worst conditioned buildings we've got at the moment. And the next slide is from the outside, where I'm sure you're all quite familiar with this view. It's a bit of an eyesore, but I wanted to end with it anyway because it gives you a sense of how far we've come. If you think back even 5 years ago, this campus all looked that bad. And we're really, really pleased through our efforts and through the dedication of the Alexander Companies and the County Historic Preservation Commission that this campus is really as magnificent as it is today. And we have all of you new residents here making it come back to life, which for so long it was just an abandoned, lonely place. So congratulations to all of you. I think that's it. So if you have any questions, thank you.